All right. In this video, I want to get into rapture dreams and visions and my actual experience with them. And I find this a bit strange on my part. It's hypocritical, but not exactly, because when I hear about people's visions and dreams that they've had, I'm very doubtful. Like, I'm skeptical. Like, I'll hear them out and I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to it. Maybe God shared that with you, maybe not. Right? That's how I see it. But about to share what I experienced. But the thing is, how it's not hypocritical is that I actually doubt and am skeptical if what I've received is from God or not. I'm going to explain that as I get in my first experience here. Now, when I first accepted Christ, I didn't actually receive the gospel. I didn't receive the gospel. I didn't grasp it. I didn't understand it. And this is around 2007, 2008. I accepted Christ. I accepted Christ as a real being that existed and came into this world as a man and lived as a man and died. I accepted that Jesus was God. I accepted all of this. And I pray to God, I pray to Jesus, and what have you. But I never really received the gospel. I never understood it. And I didn't actually have people coming to me and actually explaining it to me. Granted, not maybe now and then in conversations, people were talking to me about it online, but I never really grasped what they were actually saying. When they talk about like grace and faith and once saved, always saved, and all this stuff, it didn't quite make sense to me. It didn't click. Uh, but outside of online, I never really ran into anybody talking about the gospel. So when I accepted Jesus, I accepted him as God, and the way I saw him was that I have wronged him, and I've wronged his creation, I've wronged myself, and I need to shape up, right? But at this time, I was also just coming out of some new age stuff where I was looking into like transcendental meditation and some yoga stuff and some other spiritual practices that have to do with self-discipline and self-control and tapping into the spiritual world and whatnot. So when I received this vision, I was very doubtful that it was actually from God, because I know Satan, he's deceptive, right? So I didn't want to put my guard down and be manipulated and be deceived, but at the same time I wanted to embrace what was happening. Um, the first vision is not so much of a rapture, but is, you could say it's a bit of a rapture because of uh, of what happened. I'll explain it to you, I guess. Now, when you hear of dreams and visions, there's an actual difference, right? And the way I explain it is that with a dream, you're asleep, you're unconscious, and it's like you go into another world, but you're not fully conscious and you're not fully you, right? Because there's a parts of yourself that you don't even acknowledge, you don't even remember. It's just kind of dismissed. But in a vision, you're conscious, you're still you. And when I had this vision, I was conscious and I laid down, and when I closed my eyes, I was, the only way I can explain it is how Paul explains it, that he was just in the spirit, because my equilibrium would change with my eyes being open to closed. So when I would close my eyes, I was standing up and I was in a different place. And when I opened my eyes, all of a sudden I'm laying down and I could feel the shift, and I'm in the world we are in right now. So that wasn't a dream. That was some strange experience that I would say is a vision. So when I embraced it and closed my eyes, there was clouds, right? All kinds of clouds around, very white and bright. And there was a man uh, standing in front of this brightness. And all I could see was him and this brightness in the clouds. And when I saw him, I didn't dare to look at him because I was ashamed of myself. And I backed up and I tried to kind of just curl up into the clouds like I didn't want to be looked at, right? And I didn't feel threatened by him or anything like that. I just felt disgusted in myself and like didn't want to be near him. Like he shouldn't be around me, shouldn't touch me or anything like that. And he came up to me, and I just couldn't look. I couldn't lift my head up to even look at him. Nothing really was said, but I was like, "This is Jesus," and he was fully opening arms, like, "Hey, I'll embrace you." But it was me who was in the way. Like I said, I never really grasped the gospel. I felt like I was a shitty individual when I first came to Christ, but I never came to Christ because of hearing the gospel and believing the gospel and having faith in the gospel. I came to Jesus because of the spiritual experiences I was having and how Jesus actually interfered uh, on my request. And I realized that Jesus is God and I want to get to know him and get right with him. So my mindset was, I guess, legalese, legalism, where I needed to clean myself up. I needed to save myself and get right with him. But he was like trying to embrace me, but I wouldn't have any of it, you know. And I get why there's a lot of people who see it that way and are into legalism. They just need the gospel to be constantly brought to their attention because, like, I didn't have the anybody coming to me talking about Jesus, talking about the gospel. Uh, Now and then, I would end up talking to somebody who would talk about grace and saved by grace through faith online, but I never really grasped what they were saying. They never really got into it, or if they did get into it, I was like blinded to it. It never really clicked. So the reason why I say it's rapture is because uh, it was like I was in some kind of heavenly place, right? Taken up out of the body, right? Not exactly anything that has to do with the rapture and the timing of the rapture, but it tied into it. And it was a way for me to help explain the difference between a vision and a dream. This next one was, I would say, a vision, but I was very tired when it happened. And it was almost like I was dreaming, but the events still stick out to me. Now, at the time of this next story I'm going to tell you, I didn't believe there was a rapture or a pre-trib rapture. I just believed Jesus and I was studying and reading the Bible. I wasn't really sure if there was or wasn't, but I was leaning towards that there wasn't a rapture. But anyway, um, what ended up happening was I would get up at 3 in the morning to go to work. And uh, when I came back, I went to lay down. And when I went to lay down, all of a sudden it was as if I was getting up to go to work the next day at 3 in the morning. Right? So it was really dark out. I came outside. I was walking down the walkway to the driveway. It's dark out, and something caught my eye over to my left, and I looked up, and there wasn't any stars in the sky, but there was this bright light. It was very bright, but it wasn't like it was brighting so bright that it was like the sun shining on the whole world. The world was still dark, but this thing was very bright, and it looked like a man. And I ended up realizing it was Jesus, but I didn't get what was going on. So I was looking at this light, and it was as if uh, this Jesus was like, I'm going to say 200, 300 feet tall. And he was just a glowing light, and he looked like his arms were out. You could say as if like a cross, but it was more the way I interpreted it was his arms were open in a hey, come get a hug kind of thing, like an embrace, right? So I was looking at it and I was like, this is Jesus. And I was just looking like, wow. And then I kind of looked down and I realized that I'm like 200 or so feet off the ground. And the strange thing was is that I didn't care. I wasn't scared or worried. And that's one of the things that stuck out to me. I'm like, wow, I'm at peace with this. Like, I do not care that I could just fall to my death. And usually in dreams, I'm fearful of falling, right? But I was very calm. And then as I start to look up, to look back at the figure in the air, I look at the horizon and I see lights coming up, little lights all over the place. I suppose if I took the time, I could have started counting them. It would have been rough, but I think I could count them. But they were all going at I guess, a moderate speed, but they're all going into Jesus. Like the light would go into him. I didn't quite grasp what they were at the time, like these lights all lifting up. But I was kind of getting the picture that there are other people being lifted up, like myself, being brought to Jesus. So I was just watching as they were all going, uh, to be brought into Jesus. And I was just like, because next thing I know, I'm sitting up. I open my eyes and I wake up out of it. I was like, wow, that was strange. I remembered it and I would play it over in my mind several times. Every now and then I think about it like I have today. But this happened, like I said, 2008, 2009, and I never thought anything of it. I was like, you know what? That might be Satan trying to get me to think that I'm going to be raptured and I'm not going to have to go through any trouble because I deserve to go through the tribulation. I deserve it, and I'm going to get ready to go through it, that I can suffer and even die for Jesus because I wanted to pay for my own sins. I didn't realize that I can't, that the punishment is eternal and there's no coming back from that if I were to actually pay for my sins. But I never really grasped that. I grasped that I was a sinner and that I was shitty and I wanted to be better, and it seemed almost impossible to be better. And that's where I got to the point where I ended up eventually accepting the gospel when I just started to uh, not reject the existence of God, but reject God because of how I'm a shitty sinner. And it was like, you're not changing me. Like, you're not making me better. And I can't do this without you. Like, I can't be perfect. I can't not sin. And if I'm to do this to be saved, I'm lost. And if you care, you need to change me or else I'm not going to make it. And it got to the point, through prayer that it was like, God's not going to do this. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do my own thing. So it's like I didn't quite reject God, but I kind of fought against him for, I'm going to say, about a year because I was kind of pissed off. I kind of was like, he doesn't want me saved. He doesn't really care. And it hurt, and I was fighting against him. And then eventually, the gospel was made clear. I was actually just listening to people. I was listening to different preachers. because I still study the religion and what people are saying. I was looking into Gnosticism and stuff like that, and I ended up stumbling across a Peter Ruckman sermon. I was like, I'll hear this guy, because I started to listen to him. I was like, hey, this guy sounds like my dad. Like, he has the same roughneck, no nonsense kind of attitude. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to listen to this guy. I was like, a preacher actually sounds like this? It's like, nah, that's crazy. So I was listening to him, and I don't even remember what he said. But he talked about the gospel, about being saved by grace through faith, and that what Jesus did for us. And it just hit me. And it just hit me like all of a sudden, everything that the seeds that were planted through his word all of a sudden made sense. I guess, like Paul says, the scale were lifted off my eyes. And right then I believed the gospel and praised God for what he's done and how he's led me on this little journey. And even though I fought against him, I'm still a sinner of what he's done. And it was amazing. I know that's a bit off the subject, but it's given you an example of what's going on between the vision and the dream here. Because a couple days ago, I actually had a dream. I had a dream I was in this, it was like a flat land, and it was night, and there wasn't really anything else around. It was pretty flat, a little bit of vegetation, but no other houses. There wasn't even a road. It's like I had this little shack of a house, kind of run down, and I was with somebody else, and they were telling me to come outside, and I would come out, and the sun and the moon, it was nighttime, but the sun and the moon were both in the sky. It's kind of weird because it seemed like night anyway, because it was dark, and it had a very gloomy feeling to it. Very gloomy, like ominous, creepy, Halloween kind of vibe going on, right? And if you were to do that peace sign with your fingers, even though that's not really a peace sign, but it's probably what you're going to think of is your two fingers out like a V. If you did that and you put them up in the sky, that's how close the sun and moon were. Except the moon was a little bit lower and to the right of the sun. But they were that close. And the sun was a bit yellow. At least that's what I'm saying it was, is the sun. I don't know if it really was, but it was yellow. And the moon was darkened. It was black. And I looked at them. And I was like, that's strange. But it never clicked to me that, hey, the sun is out during the night. Maybe it wasn't really the sun. But the next thing I know is Jupiter, as the pictures of NASA depict Jupiter. That's what I saw, and it was massive. It's basically if the sun and the moon in the sky were two, let's say, golf balls, and Jupiter was like a beach ball, right? That's how big it looked compared to the sun and moon up in the sky. And it actually came in front of the sun and moon, and before it even came over the sun, it darkened it so that the sun and the moon were both black. And I was like, whoa. And eventually Jupiter comes and moves in between the earth and the sun and the moon. And I was just looking like, whoa, this cannot be good. Like in the dream, I was like, no, this is like the end. Bad things are gonna happen. There's gonna be like storms, earthquakes, something's going on. Like I had this feeling of like danger, but at the same time, I was like, hey, you don't got to worry. God's with you. You're not going to have to go through what's coming. But at the same time, I could feel like the anxiety of shit's about to hit the fan. This is the tribulation. And next thing I know, I'm like looking, I guess, in the backyard, and I have this small square of land that has wheat, golden wheat. You know, if you ever played like Minecraft with your kids or nephews or nieces or whatnot, and they plant the grass and you harvest it when it turns like a yellow color, that's what it kind of looked like. It looked kind of like the Minecraft wheat. It was golden, like it was ready to harvest the grain there. And it was I'm going to say about 10 to 12 feet by 10 to 12 feet because it was a square plot of land. And it was all golden wheat, and the grass around it was not very high, below like halfway down the shin or so. There was grass higher than you normally would probably cut your lawn, but it wasn't like overgrown. Trying to give you a picture of the area, but it was, like I said, it was like night, dark, but you could see everything relatively clearly, which is strange. Like you could actually see very far off into the distance. But anyway, my main focus was on this wheat, and I was looking at it, and uh, my attention was drawn away from Jupiter up in the sky and these what you depict as angels, winged beings, except they had kind of like this dark, basically black leather-like armor on with like a brown trim around different areas of it, and they had wings, and they were swooping down into this field very unorganizedly. It seemed very random, like and just grabbing. Sometimes they would grab a piece of the wheat, and sometimes not. And I was wondering to myself as I started to walk around the wheat, like why aren't they going in some kind of organized fashion? And when I said that, one of the angels swooped and actually bumped me out of the way, like he didn't care that I was there. He had a job to do. Like, get out of the way. I'm coming for this wheat. And I felt a little bit like, oh man, like I'm meaningless, right? That there's, I don't know. I guess it's kind of how people would feel if they're left behind. I suppose, like you're nothing. It wasn't a very strong feeling, but it was a brief little like, get out of the way. You know, you're nothing. You're a little peasant or whatnot. And then when I said that, I mean, when I was thinking that, then they kind of started doing like a organized thing where they would swoop into a whole row at a time. And while they're doing that, I noticed that about a couple feet away, lined up with that cornfield, I mean, with that wheat field, is a line of, I didn't get a good look at it, but it looked kind of like corn. A row of corn. I don't know if that means anything, but it was a row of corn, one row of it, and it seemed a bit longer than the 10 or 12-foot square row, but it was lined up with the wheat field about a couple feet away, and I would say it was about 15, 16 feet long row of what looked like corn, but I wasn't really focused on it because they left it alone. They didn't do anything with it. It just looked kind of like corn stalks, except the leaves were very dark, like basically black, and you could see the yellow of the corn, even though the corn would still be in its husk. But that's what I was saying. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. So uh, while I was watching these angels, what I would, depiction of usually how angels are, swoop down and gather the wheat in rows. There's one row left, and it's a row right in front of me, a row going across, right? And this angel comes down, and he sweeps and he's getting all of it. And when he comes to the end of it, from my left comes out what leaps, kind of, how like a cat would get down and they get ready to pounce, or like a lion, and they just lunge out. That's what it was like, but it wasn't a cat. It was actually a white unicorn with a purple mane, stabbed, it happened very quick, just stabbed that angel right in the heart with the horn. And that angel just kind of flopped to the ground at the end of that row. And when he hit the ground, he turned into looked like manure and hay mixed together. Like some kind of dung that you're gonna use for fertilizer or something. And I was looking at it like, what just happened there? And it was right around this time I woke up and started just thinking about this dream. Like, whoa, right? And while I was thinking about the dream, I was remember somebody saying that, the gospel is written in the stars. And Jupiter is what the Hebrews would use to depict either the Son of God or God. And that's why people were paying attention to Jupiter being in Virgo, as if Jesus is being born through Virgo. And so I was thinking, okay, well, Jupiter coming in between the sun and the moon is Jesus coming down like I had in my vision. And he's going to take his people up. And the angels is because after that, they're going to harvest and they're going to get the wheat. But I'm not sure if that's what was actually going on. I know they were wearing black. They look kind of like warriors. But I'm not sure. That's just how I saw it. I don't know why they left the corn alone. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But I was like, what about this unicorn? And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, and it killed an angel? I was like, how does that happen? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Maybe, like the Antichrist, they got the white horse, the purple representing royalty because the crown's given to the Antichrist, and always associated the Antichrist with the little horn. And maybe when he pierces the angel, it's just like when the dragon actually deceives a third of the angels to come down with him, and they get cast out of heaven. So when that happens, it's as if Satan has pierced their heart and killed them, and when they come to the earth, they're like dung. That's what they're going to be. They're going to die like men. And that's how I started to see it. But I'm also putting the dream out there for other people to maybe be able to break it down and explain a couple things that maybe I don't quite grasp. But yeah. Well, I was thinking about that. It was actually about a year ago that I had another dream, and that's what I'll end the video with this one. It was about a year ago. I had a very dark and ominous dream again, where, uh, like I mean by the ominous, it's kind of like you ever seen like the preview for like a Sin City movie, and the city's kind of just very dark. There's like never daylight. It's never sunny. It's always nighttime. It's always dark, but you can see everything relatively clearly. It was kind of like one of those kind of movies. And in this dream, I was kind of like in the alley between where people would go. It's not just an alley where you have your dumpster, but an alley between apartment complexes all around, and it's dark and ominous. And I was getting the impression that war is coming, and destruction's going to happen, and soldiers are coming. People are worried about it. And there's this one house that's actually safe, and there's only a man and a younger man with him in this house. And there was a woman, and there was a pregnant woman in the alley. I was getting the impression that we'd had to get into the house. And the strange thing was is that the young man who was in the house, he had like a twin who was also with the two women. And uh, what ends up happening is that for some reason they're not allowed into the house. But the woman gives birth by help of that man who's with her, and the child is given to the other woman who wasn't pregnant, and she is allowed into the house. And when she's allowed into the house with the child, that man who was helping is no longer there, and that woman who was pregnant leaves. Like, she has to go because something's about to happen. And when she leaves, like, there's soldiers and gangs, and you get this sense of like destruction around, like fires and explosions, just devastation going on. And it was like this feeling of, you got to get into the house. And I get in the house, and the older man has long, dark hair, not super long, but down to the neck, very black, with a beard, black. And the young man that was with him and the child, the woman and the child, they're not in the house anymore. So when I go in, they're gone. It's like something changed. Like, when they went in, they were gone. And when I went into the house, it was as if they were never there. And all of a sudden, it became some kind of place for these gangs and different stuff to hang out. And they were, I guess you would say, squatting and whatnot. It looked like a place where a bunch of druggies and stuff go, and they do their drugs and get wasted and lay around and whatnot. And that was about the end of that dream. I was thinking about that one too. And I was like, you know what? The house that's the safe place in this alley here, it seems like that's heaven. And I was thinking the man there was Jesus, and the younger man with him, I was thinking was the Holy Spirit, because he was both in the house and outside of the house. And after thinking about it, I was like, yeah, maybe that's what's going on, because he helps the woman give birth, and both the woman who's not pregnant, who I was thinking maybe she's the church, and the woman who's pregnant is Israel, that she and the child, which would be the 144,000, are led into the house, and they're brought into safety, but the woman has to go through what's to come, and the Holy Spirit is lifted at that same time. Like, the Holy Spirit's the one that brings them into the safe place. And that's when destruction comes, and war. And at that time, it's too late to escape. You go into the house at that time, it's no longer the safe place anymore. It's been corrupted. So, yeah. That's how I was seeing it, but I don't know. It's because I haven't been having a lot of dreams lately. And there's a lot of times I have dreams and I forget about them. Like, I'm not able to remember. But then there's these times where I have these dreams and they stick out and I can remember them and still picture the details of them. So they seem a little bit more important than the other ones. So that was about that. It was a bit weird because I look at my dreams and visions as, they could be nothing. Just like I think of the same thing when other people tell of their dreams and visions. But at the same time, I think there's something to them. So I should give some kind of credit to what other people are experiencing too. But it's kind of tough. There's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing, a lot of fake people, a lot of manipulative people. A lot of people like to have a go and have fun and mess with people. Everything's just a big joke to them. Yeah, you just say so. You gotta roll with it, have discernment, and not worry about it too much. I suppose leave it in God's hands. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.